Hey, just finished the first service and we're in week 2 of our Tuned In series, and we are talking about how to hear God's voice, how to listen to Him, and we showed that funny video of the manslater. If you missed it, you can check it out on YouTube, just manslater. But we talked about how difficult it is in communication. You know, I wish that the things that I said were the things that Robin heard, or my kids heard, or the people that I'm in relationship with. Sometimes we say things and people hear totally different things. I know it's happened to you, and why don't you take a moment, just a real quick moment in small group, and just talk about that. Just share some of those funny stories. Maybe some of them aren't so funny, but has that gotten you into trouble where you've said something and the other person took it totally a different way? All right, take a moment and talk about that. All right, so I'm sure you guys share a lot of different funny stories of how maybe some of them not so funny, or maybe they are now, but they weren't then. But the truth is, we really have a difficult time listening, and because what's being said is not always what's being heard. God wired us with the ability to hear His voice. And how we hear His voice is through our heart. Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. Or another translation, guard your heart, for it affects everything you do. And so our heart is so important, and we need to guard it. And what does that mean, the heart? So we did a little Bible study, and we shared a bunch of verses. And the heart here, basically, the heart is the center of the intellect. It's the center of the emotions, and it's the center of our will. And so when we talk about the heart, we're talking about all three of those things combined. Today, I just want to focus in on our emotions and our thoughts, or our mind, and how God speaks to us through those. He doesn't always speak audibly. Maybe there's somebody in your group that has actually heard an audible voice of God. But most of us, 99.9%, don't hear the audible. We hear what God speaks to our heart. And the problem is not with God speaking. He has a lot at His disposal. He has all of creation at His disposal. He has His word that's been preserved at His disposal. He has so much that He wants to say and speak into us, but our problem is listening. And so it's what is the condition of our heart? What's going on with our thoughts? And so we have to guard that, because it's our thoughts, our emotions that enable us to hear Him. It enables us to understand Him. Our thoughts allow us to see things. What we think about ourselves, what we think about God, what we believe we can accomplish. How do I think God sees me? What am I afraid of? All those things, all those thoughts affect how we hear God. Romans 12:2 says, don't conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so also our emotions, they allow us to feel. And there is a range of about 100 different emotions, and there's so many different things that affect our emotions. And so we have to learn how to identify those emotions. And we also need to learn how to control them. The problem is our emotions control us. And we live in a culture and a time where emotions are it's easier to medicate them than to control them or identify them. And you may be on medication. I'm not saying, let me tell you what I am saying, what I'm not saying. I'm not saying stop taking medication, but I'm asking you a question. Do you want to live like this forever? Is it easier just to medicate it, or are you willing to say, God, I want to be able to control these. I want to be able to control my emotions, because I want to be able to hear you clearly. Because God is speaking through emotion. He's speaking through the way you feel. And so He wants you to hear Him. We'll get into that in the next couple weeks in much more detail when we talk about discernment. We talk about faith and those things. Our feelings are very important in that process. But do you want to live like that? And there are times where we have to have help to get control in our lives. But you've got to ask yourself that question. I'm not asking it for you. But you have to ask yourself that question. Here's what the bottom line is. God is speaking to us, and He wants us to hear Him. He wants us to hear Him clearly. He really cares about everything in your life. And so it's up to us in the listening part. It's the heart of listening that we're talking about today. So have a great small group. I know there's lots to talk about. So God bless you.